Hello and welcome back to It's a Numbers Game. I'm Adam Morris, joined by my co-host Daniel Welling. And today we are talking about public relations, which is one of those areas that, if I'm brutally honest, I've always found very difficult to get my head around, particularly where the line sits between PR and marketing. They clearly overlap, but they're not quite the same thing, and understanding the nuance between the two can be tricky. So, to help us unpack this, we are joined by Rahme Mehmet, founder of TechComms, a specialist technology PR agency working with vendors and MSPs across the IT and MSP space. Rahme spends her time helping technology businesses build their reputation, communicate their message to the market, and develop relationships with journalists and industry influencers. So today we're going to explore what PR actually is, how it differs from marketing, and how MSPs should be thinking about it as part of their growth strategy.
Rahme, welcome to the episode.
Thank you for having me, Daniel.
We've of course, subject to when we release this, we've just made an announcement about how we are working together in 2026. So really excited to find out how that transpires during the year and what we can achieve together. But in us talking about PR for ourselves, Adam and I have become increasingly educated and hopefully becoming more mature in our approach to the PR topic. But this is something that MSPs and I think vendors as well really struggle with in terms of understanding the role of PR, what to expect, when PR is good, when PR is not the right tactic to employ. So we really wanted to get into that today with you if we can. Perhaps you could actually tell us, how do we define PR to start with?
How to define PR? Let's break this down so it's simple for everyone to understand. Ultimately, PR, it represents the word public relations. So it's about building relationships ultimately, or communicating to the public being. For an MSP, it would be their end users. For a vendor serving the MSPs, it would be their end users would be the MSPs themselves. So ultimately, when we think about PR, the best way to describe it is communications to the audience that you're trying to influence. It's also there's multiple layers to public relations. It's not just about communications. It's about what you communicate, how you communicate. It's also about helping build a reputation for the company that you're communicating on behalf of. There's also an element of building relationships with relevant influencers that will impact your end customers. It's about helping the company themselves, the MSPs, build their brand awareness. There's an element of building your brand, which falls into the marketing arena if you was to look at the whole marketing mix. So public relations is one element within the marketing mix. And within marketing, you would have, some may have sales within that section, because sales and marketing work very closely together, but separate function. They work closely together. But within marketing, you would have your brands, you would have your lead gen, your demand gen. You would have all the glossy content that you would put out there, but which may not necessarily influence the audience, the PR audience that you're trying to reach, but they all fall within the mix of trying to build a brand's recognition in a market. So I guess I've gone about it a long way in explaining, but I was trying to simplify it so people can really understand that it's not just one thing. But ultimately, as a PR consultants or professionals, we have to look at what the objective is for the company that we're representing and how we go about helping grow their brand presence, help them grow their sales. It could be that we're helping them change a perception, for example, that people may have about a company. So there's various levels to this, really, that people need to consider when they think about what is PR and how to best use it.
So PR is a subset of marketing. Is that correct?
That's how I think people will see it as a part of the marketing mix, PR. But it is in itself as
A
a
separate
discipline
discipline.
in itself.
But some marketing
Um,
professionals might do PR within their
that's
set
right.
of services under marketing. Likewise, a PR professional might do marketing within PR. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
right. So sometimes we have end customers that are marketing head. Sometimes we have a dedicated PR professional. It really depends on the scale of the company that we're working with, because the larger the firm, we tend to find that they have set people that will
So,
own that
so
particular function.
just to help me out here, what's definitely PR and what's definitely marketing, and what are things which are somewhere in the middle and are very confusing, and some people may see them as PR and some people may see them as marketing, if there are any things like that.
I think content would be a good example of this. For example, a company may have created a white paper. The white paper might educate their end customers about a particular topic, for example. Now, that white paper would be distributed and shared as a lead generation piece of content that will help people want to engage with the company, read what they've got to share on the white paper through maybe an email campaign that comes through to them. Whereas content can also be used by a PR professional that will review what that content is and what it's actually telling an audience. It could be presented to influencers. In this case, it would be the reporters as some content that the company is issuing that will be able to, that actually solves some issues in the market. And on the back of that, we help encourage some thought leadership ideas that potentially a leader within that company can talk to, using that piece of content as an anchor to open up a discussion. So that in that way, we use that piece of content in a different capacity. Marketing might use that content in a different capacity. Sometimes we as PRs would want to have access to that content first. So we issue that to our reporters ahead of time, offer the executives to talk around the topics that are in the white paper, potentially selling. I say selling because it is almost a sales job in a way, where you sell in an idea around that particular content and some thought leadership around this that the publications or the editors might be interested to hear about. And then we help create the content to have some placements or thought leadership articles within publications. And then the marketeers may take that similar content and distribute it to their customers or prospects to try and get them to want to engage. They may conduct a webinar and present the white paper content in a webinar to prospects. So that's how one piece of content will be used into different formats and in different ways to help. One will be amplifying the brand, building brand awareness and thought leadership content with reporters that may write about this particular topic or interview the leader or take a article, and that is then read in an earned capacity by your prospects and your customers, for example. Whereas in the other format, marketing is very much sharing that content, trying to draw people and help educate them in a
Is
different.
part of this the objective behind what you're looking to achieve as to whether it's PR or whether it's marketing? So is marketing looking for more of a direct correlation around lead gen and opportunities, and PR isn't in quite the same way? And I know we're going to go on and talk about how you might measure the outcome of PR, but is there a component of that around the two disciplines, or am I overthinking this?
Well, objectives, I guess the objectives with marketing can be a lot clearer in certain respects because, for example, the content for this white paper they could potentially put out this webinar with their prospects with the intent for their prospects to sign up. And they may have a certain number of prospects join a webinar discussion. and on the back of that have a certain number that maybe potentially sign up. So it's very clear you've had this particular type of outreach and you've gained something that's tangible. Whereas on the PR side, the tangible gain is through your exposure. So it could be through the exposure of the publication. How many people actually read that publication? Is that publication shared across social channels where it increases the reach? Or if it's nowadays everything is online. If it's online, how has that particular piece of content impacted your search optimization on your website and pushed your rankings higher on search? We also have now people using, obviously, AI-enabled tools. So that's another way in which people are measuring to see if particular content that's out there is being captured by these AI search softwares that are out there now. So there's various ways in which success is measured on PR and success is measured on marketing. However, where there's a bit of a grey area is how do you tie back the value that the PR has given to the business without actually tying it back to a sale? Unless you actually ask someone, made you want to engage with this company? I think you have to look at PR in a much broader sense than with marketing.
Be honest. When was the last time you actually felt in control of your MSP finances? The late nights chasing invoices, the cash flow stress, constant pressure to grow profit, it can feel never-ending. At MSP Finance Team, we've built the complete outsourced finance solution just for MSPs. From day-to-day bookkeeping to annual tax, management reporting, and full virtual finance team support, everything you need to run a profitable, stress-free business is under one roof. So whether you want to regain control, free up personal time, or finally build towards a real financial freedom, we can help you get there faster. Visit mspfinanceteam.com and discover how our outsourced finance team can help you stop surviving and start thriving.
Which, of course, is the conundrum, I think, for so many new to and experienced in sales and marketing. The perennial challenge here is I've done calling, I've had digital, I've had social media, or I've had PR, I've been doing events. Which one of those actually meant that the client booked a meeting or bought from us? And of course, the answer probably is it's all of them mixed together. And therefore, in fact, I'm sure there was a famous quote where someone said, I know half of my marketing spend is delivering a return. I just don't know which half. And I guess this sort of falls into that conundrum.
Yeah, it's hard to measure, isn't it? We do have, and this is one of the things that we do up front when we work with clients, is we try to understand how they value PR, what do they see as a successful PR campaign? What is the return they're looking for? And we've had various different responses. Some just want as many pieces of coverage as possible, whether the coverage is valuable or not. When I say coverage, it hits following outreach. We've achieved coverage in a publication for them. That's one piece of coverage, but not every piece of coverage is of value. There's different ways in which we would measure a valuable piece of coverage. Whereas depending on who you're working with, everyone will have a different way in which they see value from the PR. Some will want their company name to be in the headline, for example, spokespeople being referenced, customers being referenced, certain publications which have got, we tier publications. It could be tiered based on reach and reputation. It could be on regional location, depending on whether the company wants to have coverage in various countries. Yeah, it's hard, but we try to define what success looks like for them in terms of PR exposure. But more often than not, now an area that I'm exploring is more to do with the messaging pull through and what the core messages are for the company, because ultimately we have to align to how the company wants to be represented and positioned. And if the coverage is, it has to not only be seen in the right places, but what's been communicated about the company has to be representative of what the message is that the company wants to relay to the wider audience. And that is an area that I think is very important when you're looking at PR.
And I guess the question on my mind is, who should be buying PR versus who should be buying SEO, making phone calls? Is there, and I'm sure there isn't, but some sort of guide, like perhaps some extremes and when we can work our way back to the middle?
Yeah, I think that an integration of all is important because I think of it, look, who should be buying? I think if a company has a representative who's covering marketing, then they would be thinking about PR. Whether they want to think about it in the sense that they use an agency to support their PR, it is totally a different ask. I think initially there'll need to be the marketing and the communications would need to work together, because you need to communicate the right messages on your marketing collateral. So marketing, I think even a small MSP would need to have a brochure, a website to represent who they are. That in itself is the bare basics of marketing. Then you then look at what am I saying about myself as an MSP? Is it a family-run MSP? Do we have a nice diverse team? Are we a team that's customer first in terms of our messaging? Everyone who is running a business will have some way of wanting to represent themselves to their customers. And the website would be the brochure and how they can do that. And then the PR element of that would be the words you use to describe yourself on that website. So when anyone comes onto your website and reads about us and your services and maybe looks at your social handles, because at the bare minimum, any company would have these tools in place. Are they aligned with what the company wants to see themselves as and wants to represent themselves as? Now, as the company grows and becomes bigger and wants to potentially look at maybe launching new products or discussing what they're doing with customers, they may then look to create some content that could be used both on the PR and on the marketing side. And a good example of that would be a customer case study or customers testimonials. You might find that an MSP is growing, they're getting more customers in a certain vertical, and they've just decided that actually they're getting more customers that are falling within a particular vertical market, and they want to now attract more. So how are they going to do that? They might then have a few of their customers talk to what they're doing. It could be that they're doing more with the restaurant or retail space. So therefore, they might speak to their customers, have them agree to a customer case study, and then potentially go to the media if we want to take it to the level where we're going to position them as an expert in that particular vertical. They may go to publications in that vertical and ask to be part of a technology feature, for example, in a retail publication that's sold to in the B2B space, to raise awareness of what they're doing within particular retail verticals and how they're bringing value proposition to that particular market. And then they're then moving into a different form of PR where they're using PR to attract more customers, build their reputation, and be able to be seen as an MSP that's serving that particular space, for example.
And that's probably exactly where my mind immediately goes when I think of PR. I think of, I'm looking at a magazine and there's either a one-page advertisement for for the MSP, or there's an article which features a topic that the MSP helps with, which would, in my mind, have a higher value than seeing a paid for bought advert, as it were. And then I think this is a valid term. Is it advertorial, where you effectively have mashup of the two, but ideally you want to be unpaid, or the perception that it's unpaid. And of course, to get to that point, you've had to put money behind it, because you've had to have that activity to promote to the journalists to have that article included.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that's where us as an agency, we can come in and do some of that work, or we work in collaboration with our clients who may have someone in-house that can potentially create some of that content, and then we help revise it and ensure that it's at a standard that an editor would be interested to take that particular content. However, it's a tricky one, because I do think sometimes if the content is a bit too self-serving, it does fall into that advertorial side, where an editor will look at it and think, this is not thought leadership, this is not something that is adding value, it's more self-serving. And that's when we have to look at how we can provide some visionary content and weave in some examples of case studies where there's been success in certain verticals. And that comes with part of what, I guess, it's experience and an understanding of what is required to be able to get earned coverage versus paid coverage. But I do think there needs to be a combination of all. You have to, your owned coverage is your website, your blogs, your socials, and then you've obviously got the paid side where you might pay to have advertisement or advertorials. You've got the earned side where you work with the influencers, like the editors, or in some cases, the industry analysts. If you're influencing a technology analyst, if you're influencing like a technology analyst as part of your communications program, or sourcing advisors, an influencer could be also one of the people that you need to influence. It doesn't necessarily have to be a publication anymore as well. So there's various layers to this. It's not as simple as it seems. I think sometimes that's the best way to describe it.
I'll pick up on the definition, which really resonated for me: paid and earned. I see PR as the earned part of it, and I think that's really useful. And of course, we're trying to simplify, condense down what is an incredibly complex topic and discipline into something more sort of bite-sized for us to understand, and there'll be limitations to that. But that said, to put you on the spot, maybe to leave our listeners with some solid actions, activities, topics to think about to get them started on an earned journey, for example, as part of their overall marketing and communications mix. Some tips and tricks to get started.
I think the most important thing is understanding, who you are. It's really, you have to go back to the basics. What does your company represent? What is it that you offer the market? Who is it that you offer this to? Because you need to have a clear idea of how you would describe your business, and what services you provide, and what value it brings to your customers. And once you've defined those areas within your business, it's good to then go back and look at what you own, the owns part of the mix of content that you put out there externally, and check to see, what you've got on your website and your social handles does represent the overall objectives of who you are, what you offer, what value it brings. Because if you haven't got that particular section correct, then to be able to then go out and speak to reporters about where the market's going and what you're doing to change that market, your foundations may not be right before you can externally go out and speak to anyone and influence them on what value you're really offering the market you're in. So I think that's very important. But I guess if you're a company that has everything in hand and you've got all of that in place, I think the most important thing is having a look at what you're planning each quarter in terms of your communications plans and linking that back to your business objectives for the year. So if your business objective for the year is to launch a new product that you're looking to have your existing customers maybe want move to, you need to then look at what communications you're going to put in place to show the value of that move, the benefit of that move, examples of people that have made that move. It really depends on what stage you are in your business, but making sure the foundations are right is very important.
And of course, a sentiment that Adam and I echo in our conversations with our clients around business planning, and really getting back to what do you really want to be and achieve. And if you can get that bit right, then the rest of it really flows. And I guess from perhaps the third thing that I would see in terms of the sort of PR activation would be to perhaps start to see if you can develop those journalistic and analyst relationships, and maybe that's where someone like yourself could help in terms of providing, perhaps if not a sort of fully outsourced, maybe almost like a sort of coaching, educational type service to help a marketeer become a communicator.
Yeah, definitely. I think you touched upon that the relationships are very important. We spend a lot of time getting to know the people that we work with in terms of the editors, the writers, what their interests are, what they would like to hear about what they're writing about. And also, I guess the relationships are important, and for anyone working in-house, for them to be able to get in front of the right reporters, it's ensuring that what you're offering them is the right information to actually even make them interested in wanting to engage. That's something that we definitely have helped clients with. We also help clients with how to engage and speak to a reporter, what the do's and don'ts are. We help with the message that they may want to relay, how to really be able to communicate that message in a way in which it will be received well. I guess the reputational management side of things is another area that we help clients with. There's a lot of things that can happen in the business that can derail a business. So we do also help them with planning for any types of crisis. And it doesn't always have to be a major crisis to be prepared to communicate, but we do also help with different scenarios where they might need to have some pre-prepared content to go out to their customers, to go out to the reporters that will be writing about that particular crisis. So there's so many layers to what we offer.
And that I think is an area we'd love to get into, maybe on a future podcast around. I mean, from an IT perspective, there's plenty of opportunities to have crises that need to be carefully managed, and I don't think anyone in the IT world is outside of that risk. So that would perhaps be a good starting point for our next conversation.
Absolutely, I'm happy to do that.
Brilliant. Somehow we've nearly run out of time, but just before we summarise, Adam, your thoughts.
I wanted to ask a question, actually, because no podcast is complete now without a question about AI. So I'm interested, Rahme, to know, to what extent is it a threat, and to what extent is it an opportunity in your particular market?
I've actually been doing a lot of learning about AI, and it has impacted the PR world in the sense that we are expected to move a lot faster, work a lot faster than we used to. And we already work very quickly in PR because obviously there's news about companies and events happening all the time. But I do think the AI tools have enabled PRs to be able to work faster, there is some good tools that enable you to analyze content a lot faster. We have come across people that and we've had to provide some talks to clients about the risks involved in using AI for thought leadership and creating content with AI, because that it does mean that a lot of the content that people generate and push out there, it could actually impact reputation, because ultimately it is really obvious when content is created with AI. And there's so many AI checkers now, so you would know if something has been created with AI. So we are having to do more educational talks with clients around the do's and don'ts of when you're using AI for communications. I recently spoke to a company around SEO, and there's been this people using AI to be able to do search. And therefore, there's been a discussion around, is the value of SEO still strong? And the answer is yes, it is, because content out there on the web is where the AIs are searching to gather this information. I think it boils down to the comms or the communications on these sites need to be correct for the AI tools to be able to extract information, and the information they extract, you want it to be accurate and credible. So yeah, the AI is impacting the PR world, but I do think then there is best practice around how to do this, and also there's agencies that are using AI, but they also need to be quite transparent with their clients on how it's being used, and there's policies being developed now on how AI should be even used in the creative world. Yeah, a lot happening in this world.
Fascinating, and it's going to be difficult to obviously predict where it's going. Looking to ensure that your copywriting isn't obviously AI, right? When are we going to be at the point where all copywriting is AI and human writing is the exception, and everyone just accepts it, and it is what it is because we've moved on?
I don't think that would happen personally, because I feel as though we will be very restricted. There would be no uniqueness in the content if it was all AI, because the AI content that's being generated is being generated with what's available. Now, if there's restrictions in what's available, we're going to be them restricted in what content is being generated. So I don't think that could happen, because then we'll be very limited.
So we're into the philosophical
human
area
being.
of creativity and the extent to which we
Right.
get general AI and full creativity. Sounds like that's a conversation for another day. I think it's fascinating, this whole thing, this whole subject, and where it's going, and how your job, Rahme, will change over the next few years, because it's going to, isn't it? As is ours, of course. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this all pans out. Then my own personal view here is that, yes, we can tell when something is AI and when it's not, but it's getting harder and harder. It's moved on massively in the last 2-3 years. I'm fairly convinced most copy that goes out nowadays is AI in there somewhere, if only creating ideas and structure and what have you. Yeah, it's an interesting area. Dan, what are your thoughts?
This whole topic of AI being exposed and the PR element, my mind immediately went to lip syncers and Milli Vanilli, where the PR impacts of them getting caught out. And so, yeah, so I think I wholeheartedly agree with Rahme insofar as that there's got to be some originality in there, some actual intelligence at some point for the artificial to follow. But yeah, we certainly shouldn't be lip syncing our PR and our content, I don't think. And on that bombshell, Rahme, perhaps if anyone would like to carry on the conversation, philosophical or PR related, how best to get in touch?
How best to get in touch? You could look at our website. So that's techcomms.co.uk. You can reach out to us. The easiest way would be via info@techcomms.co.uk, or reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, happy to connect there and speak to people directly.
Very good. Thank you ever so much for joining us, and we'll certainly get the next episode booked and look forward to working with you during 2026.
Brilliant. Looking forward to it. Thank you very much.